24, 32, 40, 48, so great, 56, 64, and 72. I'm gonna show you how to count by eights. 8 times 1, that equals 8. 16.
All right, welcome to May 6th. It is Wednesday. We're in that mid-week day, getting closer to the end into the weekend. So today for math, we are continuing on with angles. Today you're going to be given a protractor actually on your page, because I know you guys don't have all those protractors we have in class in your little cubbies, but we will make it work. So that being said, today you are going to be doing that page that has a protractor on and measuring those angles using that. Word problem of the week, it's still Mr. Taylor's hot dogs. This is going to be kind of that final wrap-up day for you to work on, and tomorrow I will be walking you through the entire problem, and then we will be reading our second article, and I will read it aloud for you. It's called Climbing Kilimanjaro, and then Epic and AR reading, and of course I will add in the Harry Potter. I'm going to be reading that from, I got an illustrated copy, so that's going to be a little different today, but hopefully it gets a little more interactive for you, a little switch up, but still moving on with those chapters. I want to say we're on 8 or 9. Yesterday was the potions with Professor Snape. So writing today is moving on now to day 16, and same old with going and spending that extra time with cursive or journaling if you have it in those 30 minutes.
8 times 1, that equals 8. 16, that's 2 times 8. 24 is 3 times 8. Are you starting to see? 32 is 4 times 8. 40 is 5 times 8.
Math today we have understanding angles. It's page 30, so you're actually going backwards in your packet. You're going to be looking for 4.md.5, and it's not going to have that Wednesday math, but you should be a-okay if you're keeping it down there and you're looking for page 30, which you can't really see right now, but it is there. And of course, click in here to go to Google Classroom and click below if you're using the forms. But page 30 is that magic number you're looking for, and this page with 4 circles should get you where you need to be. All right, so I'm going to go over vocab first, and then I'm going to show you the video. I'm kind of switching it because yesterday we did that kind of vocabulary-ish video, the song that you guys are used to seeing. Today's going to be how you use a protractor to measure. So with the angle today, angles, again, we went over this yesterday. I'm going to go over it again today. This little sign right here that's normally used to being an equality sign, this also goes for an angle sign. And you're going to see it towards the letters that you're using to identify an angle. And in this one, you're identifying A, B, C. So you're identifying this angle right here as that vertex, that middle point is at B. That's where the angle is. So the exact definition is the joining of 2 different rays sharing a common vertex. All right, an acute angle is an angle with a measurement less than 90. These vocab words are going to come into play today because in that first step when we're measuring using a protractor, we're going to be using our observation and kind of make a hypothesis on what we think this angle's measurement is going to be before we even take out that protractor. It's those same steps that I taught you in class because, again, all of these concepts are review. Of course, maybe you'll pick up more this time or understand it in a deeper way, but I want to make sure I'm teaching it to you again the same types of ways, so it's reactivating and bringing back some of that memory of the processes we use. So the process we used was that first one of going, let me look at this. Is this, okay, 90 degrees is here. Is it a little less? Okay, it's going to be acute. So that means it's going to be 0 to, well, it can't be more than 90, so 0 to 89 degrees. And if it's greater than that 90, you're going to go, the measurement's going to have to be obtuse. So that means it's going to be greater than 90, but not greater than 180. So you start to kind of narrow down what your degrees that you're looking for is. And it's that mathematical reasoning. It's that ability to not just depend on these rules or these memorization tactics for math that Miss.Princell gave you when you wrote down in a notebook or saw in a Eureka sprint. It's you understanding these deeply and being able to apply them. Because in real life, you'll be able to apply them outside of just a worksheet that has little circles on it or little angles. That's the hope. That's the idea. So in doing this prediction kind of step and labeling these, is it necessary in the exact form? Is it going to ask you for that step? No, but it's the step that we want to take, the step in our thinking that gets us to that final answer. You, quote unquote, are getting points or graded or whatever you guys want to call it in class, is that point system that you're getting points for. You're not getting points for identifying a cute today, but it's in the steps to get to that degree measure. I hope that made some sense, but I want to make sure you guys are realizing why these vocab words are still important. Okay, so moving on, a right angle. You know that a right angle is perpendicular lines measuring 90 degrees. And if you remember, there's a signal or the kind of marker that will tell you that you're dealing with a right angle. Not only will you see that kind of L shape and see this corner of a square, you're going to see this notation that's a lot different from that circle curve that you see on any other angle. 90 degrees specifically is the only angle that has this mark. So it's another hint that you can have to go, oh, that's a right angle. Then finally, in obtuse angle, it's going to have that circle for angle. And you want to know that it's greater than 90. Yep, it's more than 90 degrees, which is a right angle, but it's not more than 180. So it's going to be in this range, and 180 is a straight angle. So you're going to be in between this area here of degrees. All right, so now I'm going to play this video. This video is about angles. It will review that in a way, but a lot of it is making sure you understand and are moving towards understanding how to measure with a protractor.
Hello friends, welcome to a new happy learning video. Look at these images. Do you know what we're looking at? Exactly, they are angles. And today we are going to learn many things about them. An angle is a space between two intersecting lines or surfaces that emerge from the same point called vertex. If you look around, we are surrounded by angles, like the ones this clock handles. Or an ice cream cone makes. The unit of measure of the angles is the degree. And the most important angle of all is this one. It's called a right angle, and it measures 90 degrees. The tiny zero you can see in the right upper part of the number 90 is a symbol that represents all angles. We say that a right angle is the most important one because it is the one that is used to compare all of the other angles. The angles that are smaller than a right angle are called acute angles, and they measure less than 90 degrees, like all of these. And the angles that are bigger than a right angle are called obtuse angles and measure more than 90 degrees, like all of these. To know the degrees that an angle measures, we need to use this instrument, which is called a protractor. So we need to place the straight part of the protractor over one of the sides of the angle, making the vertex and the central point of the protractor meet. After this, we need to look at the protractor line on the other side of the angle and look at what number it says. These are the degrees that an angle measures. Easy peasy, huh? Let's practice. We said that a right angle is 90 degrees. Let's see. We'll get the protractor and, indeed, a right angle is 90 degrees. We haven't fooled you, huh? Now, let's measure this angle. Let's see how much it measures. 45 degrees. It's an acute angle because it is smaller than a right angle. And now, we're going to check out how much this other angle measures. 120 degrees. Of course. It's an obtuse angle because it measures more than 90 degrees. Imagine that instead of being 120, it measures 180. Do you know what this angle is called? We call it a straight angle. Hey, and what about if it measures 360 degrees? Well, that's a complete or full angle. It's complete as can be. A circumference measures 360 degrees. What a discovery! Measuring angles is easy peasy and fun, don't you think? Goodbye, friends, and don't forget to subscribe to Happy Learning TV.
All right, so let's get started with measuring and practicing before it's your turn to get started on your own. So I want to start with making sure we're kind of centered and make sure you know what our focus is today. Today is that you can recognize angles as geometric shapes where two rays share a common endpoint, and understand that angles are measured with reference to a circle with its center at the common endpoint of the rays. That is a ton of words. That is a lot of things, and it has a lot of the vocab that we built as our foundation in the previous days, and they're all things that we've went over, so I feel like there could be some confusion, but I want you to make sure and know that as we go through these slides, I believe that this kind of big learning intention will be broken down and show you that each part is significant to be added, but that each of these steps kind of fall into one another and they become very, very easy to follow. So that being said, you're going to be seeing models like this that they give you the protractor. On the one on your paper, you're going to get the one that's 360. So 360 is a circle because in half, which is this, there's 180. So 180 plus another 180 is going to make you that complete circle. We are going to practice with this protractor right now because this was the type of protractor I gave to you. So I really want to reactivate that knowledge for you and then kind of ease you into seeing, oh, the 360, that's not a big deal. Don't freak out. I can still measure my angle. So I broke down into the process that we did in class to try to, as I told you before, reactivate your knowledge. So we're going to go step by step instead of just skipping straight to the protractor and writing down a degree. So that being said, our first step says, identify whether you think the angle is greater, less than, or equal to a right angle. And it's telling you a right angle is 90 degrees. We went over that yesterday. All right, so, and we see that 90 degree mark right here because we know 90 degrees is when you're making that L, or you put up your hands in the sky and you have the one pointing up and one to the side. You know that it's that L. So you go and anchor yourself and say, okay, if I had 90 degrees, it would go straight down and across. Okay, well, this angle, is it bigger than that? It looks a little smaller. And what is that? If it's less than 90, what was that vocabulary word that told me what that angle was? An angle that is less than 90 degrees. Go ahead and say it, write it down before I tell you. That angle that is less than 90 degrees is an acute angle. Perfect. Yes, I know that. All right, so we know that this angle is going to be acute. That means it's going to have to be less than 90. All right, let's move on to step 2. It says take your protractor and line up the center point of the protractor directly with the point of the angle, the vertex. Now, what's difficult with this is they already did this for you. They already set up your protractor. So I kind of wrestled back and forth with going, do I just take that out? But I want you guys to remember that if you had your protractor, you would have to do this. So I'm going to leave it in and we're going to make sure you know that each time. So you would line it up and make sure you have your vertex where that dot is and it's all good and ready to go. So your measurements up here are accurate. The second part of that is that you need to make sure this bottom line, which is actually a ray, because remember 2 rays make a vertex, you're sure that that edge of your protractor where the numbers begin, so where your 0 is right under here. If you look, I'll go back one slide, that 0's right here. You want to make sure that your bottom ray is lined up with that 0 mark, because you want to imagine if you had a ruler and you're measuring the height of, I don't know, your pencil. You have to start your pencil at one end at 0. If you start your pencil at the 2 centimeter mark and then say, oh, it's 12 centimeters. Absolutely not. You added 2 centimeters to that. It's like if you want to go on a roller coaster. You can't stand on a box and say, oh, I'm tall enough. No. They start you at the floor at 0 and measure you up. And whatever you land at is how tall you are. It's not based on, oh, Miss.Princell went up 2 flights of stairs. Can you measure how tall she is now? She's, I don't even know. What would that even be? I mean, 100 feet high? Those type of things you need to be thinking about, that you have to be starting at 0 to get an accurate measurement. As you would with a ruler, as you would with anything else, the same thing goes with this type of measurement. Those rules still apply. So it's so important that you're lining up that angle and that bottom ray with your 0. Then comes in the step that you need to find the number of degrees of the angle by counting up from the 0 mark, just as you would with a ruler. You would start down at 0 and go, oh, my pencil's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8 centimeters high. You're going to start with 0 and go, how big is my angle? And you're going to come here and you're going to say, oh, okay. My second ray, I'm going to follow it. Where does it hit? Oh, it's 115. You're going to write that down. You're going to celebrate. You'll maybe get up, spin around in your chair, ask your mom for a break, maybe a snack, and then sit back down and go to problem 2. But no, you are going to know that you just fell for a misconception. You used your ruler completely wrong. Your tool of measurement is not being used correctly. That protractor just got played by you. Or it played you. I don't know which one you want to go with. You fell for it. You did this work of knowing in that first step, it's an acute angle. And then you're going to sit here and go 115. Is 115 degrees an acute angle? Please say no. It's not. It is not. We said, we agreed. Roll back the tape. See, this is when it's useful. These videos are useful only in these moments. You can roll back the tape and know that we said an acute angle, it was an acute angle because we knew it was less than 90. So then we're going to go 3 steps later and say 115. No, absolutely not. You need to come back to your protractor and say, what am I doing wrong? Where did I go wrong? Oh my gosh, I started counting up from 180, 170, 160, 150, 140, 130, and I said 115. Are you kidding me? I started at 180, not 0, and counted backwards. Is that accurate? Absolutely not. I am not being careful with my math. You need to come back down here with your protractor, be careful with your measurements, and start at 0 like you agreed to do. And you're going to go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Uh-oh, it's in between 60 and 70. It's halfway. So what do I have? 75? No? What is it? Please tell me. I want to have the Dora. 65. You do not want to make a mistake that then you start counting this way and going 75. No, you want to pay attention to how it's counting. And it's weird, guys, I know, because it looks like your number lines always come this way if you follow my arrow. It's weird, it is, but you got to learn this new form of measurement, follow it, and make sure you're paying attention to the things you already know. You got not 115, but 65 degrees. And now you check yourself back with number 1. Identify whether you think it is greater than, less than, or equal to. Is this less than? It's acute. Less than 90? Is 65 less than 90? Yes. Perfect. I got my acute angle. All right, we are going to repeat this process one more time. We are going to identify this angle. So I'm going to give you a moment to look at this angle and tell me if you think it is greater than, less than, or equal to a right angle. All right, hopefully you have decided by looking at the 90 degrees and saying, okay, that's my bottom ray. Here's my top ray. Ooh, this one looks bigger, so it is an obtuse angle. It is greater than 90, but less than 180 was that vocab I went over. So now you're going to go on and take your protractor, make sure it's lined up. Yep, they did it for me. Now you're going to make sure that bottom ray is lined up with 0. Yep, I got it in line. And now your job is to follow that count and make sure that you come over here and tell me what is the measure of your angle. 50. And you are screaming at your screen saying, no, you made the same mistake again. What did I do wrong? I again did not follow and look at my actual angle and check my thinking. This angle has to be greater than 90. I came along and went, oh, it hit 50. There we go. 50 is right there. It must be 50. Absolutely not. You are extremely incorrect. You need to be following your 0 as you promised over here in your steps. 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Okay, now we're greater. That makes sense. 100, 110, 120, 130. Not 50 up here. That wasn't what we were measuring. We weren't measuring from this 0 and counting the angles. We started from 0, counted, and it's obtuse, so it matches what our original prediction was, and it makes sense mathematically. And here's our number to make sure we measured properly on our protractor.
First up is 3 times 1, which is 3. That's an easy one, so what's next? Are you ready to start? Well, next you double and it's really no trouble. 3 times 2.
All right, guys, I know it is week 4 and we are still on this problem with MNP, the kind of measurement of the angle. Yesterday I went in and kind of got you making sure your annotations were on there and you were pulling out the right numbers and we were understanding your question and what we are looking for. And I, once again this week, am kind of in that hard spot of if I keep going, I'm totally going to give away the answer before you've really had your chance. So I want to make sure that you know today is kind of your last day before tomorrow. I kind of spoil it and the spoiler alerts are out. But I want to give you that shot for one more day, kind of a fair shot, and give you your time and not ruin your thinking process. And I want to make sure that you feel like you can use what I've given you, but also keep trying, bring in the colors if you want, with making sure you're labeling these angles by MNP, and you make the angle sign like we've been seeing and practicing, and put in that that's 110 degrees, and then make sure that you're following this angle with a pencil and saying MNO, okay, that's 80 degrees, and then really stand back and really look and think, how on earth can I find ONP? And you know for sure if this is a word problem and Miss.Princell is giving it to you, there's a way to solve it and a way to answer it. You're just going to have to be flexible with your thinking. If you're feeling stuck, like there's no way, just really start thinking outside the box and trying different things. That's why you have all that room to draw some models and figure it out. So give yourself a chance, maybe give yourself a fresh chance if it's frustrating, pull out a fresh sheet of paper, put away the old one, and see what's new in your brain today to solve it. I will go over the work tomorrow and keep sending them my way. I really love all your original ways that you guys solve these problems. That's what makes math so fun. We all have our own way, but we all come back down to that same answer in our own ways. All right, guys, you got this.
Buddy, tell me please. It doesn't say, so we must stop and read carefully. Let's find the theme. Friendship, family, courage, empathy. You start with big topics, then choose one and see, what does the author believe? You make it specific.
All right, today's Achieve article, we're on Achieve number 2 for the week, and it's called Climbing Kilimanjaro. So you're going to want to be looking for these 3 guys that are looking like they're going through something. I'm going to pull up the article big so I can really give you that picture live, but go over into the Achieve notes of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. 3 U.S. war veterans have climbed Mount Kilimanjaro at 19,340 feet, about 5,894.8 meters. It's the highest mountain in Africa. The soldiers were veterans of the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Vietnam. All 3 are amputees. They lost one or both legs in battle. The soldiers were trying to send a message. The men want others with disabilities to know that they can get moving and lead a healthy life. Kirk Bauer was the oldest climber, at 62 years old. He lost one leg in 1969. Dan Nevins is 37. He lost both legs in war. Neil Duncan is the youngest of the 3. He's 26. He also lost both his legs. The climb wasn't easy. Kilimanjaro's lower paths are flat dirt, but the mountain's higher trails turn into loose rock. This gravel is difficult for people who have prosthetics to walk on. Ooh, wait a second. Let me circle that word. I don't know what that means. Where is that? Prosthetic. Sorry, guys, I gotta make sure that I can go back during my second read to this word. Prosthetics to walk on. Along the climb, Nevins got a sore on one of his leg stumps. It caused him to become sick. After reaching the top, Nevins climbed back down to 15,000 feet, about 4,725 meters. He was taken down the rest of the way on a wheeled stretcher. What does stretcher mean? Wheeled stretch. Going down the mountain is the hardest part. It was no easier for the amputees. Didn't they say that word earlier? See it up here. Make sure. Go and look that up. All right. Duncan lost his footing and flipped Bowers. There's that word again. Prosthetic. Oh, but it says, I don't know. Prosthetic leg fell off. Still, the men said the climb was worth it. Part 2. Dig deeper. New kinds, of prosthetics are created each year. Scientists are testing a new technology. It allows a person to control a prosthetic leg through his or her thoughts. How does it work? Sensors are attached to the person's nerve pathway. These sensors pick up messages from the brain. There is a tiny computer inside the prosthetic leg. It changes the message into action. Over time, the tiny computer learns patterns of actions. This makes the prosthetic leg react more easily to the user's thought. 10 years ago, none of this was possible. Why not? Today, there are new technologies and materials. Before, the sensors and materials needed to make a prosthetic leg move would have weighed about 300 pounds. New materials have brought the weight down to 10.2 pounds. Scientists think it can go even lower. New technology brings new hope. It can change lives. All right, my dictionary, and yay, one of them is right there, that prosthetic word that kept getting me, an amputee. Did we highlight that too? Yep. Okay, well, at least, that's both of the words. Oh, but stretcher, we'll be able to figure that out, hopefully. All right, it says amputee is someone who has lost an egg or lost an arm or a leg. So let's see. All 3 are amputees. Okay, so all 3 of the men have either lost an arm or a leg. And then down here, okay, they told us some lost 1 leg, some lost 2, some lost both. All right, that makes sense. Amputee is when you lose basically an arm or a leg. Got it. Disability, something that makes it hard for someone to do the things that other people can do. All right. Prosthetic, a part that is used to take the place of a missing body part. Oh, okay. All right. I've seen that before when someone who doesn't have a leg has one of those legs. It kind of looks like a robotic leg, but it actually is just in that place, and then they're able to walk. I know Miss.Princell showed us that YouTube video of that kid that played basketball that had was amputated at the knee. Okay, so a prosthetic is just what they call that replacement for their limb that they lost. Okay, that makes sense. Next vocab word, sensor, a tool that can tell when someone is there or when something changes. Oh, like a sensor, I know, I have one of those Ring doorbells. Okay, so it senses when someone's there, and maybe with these prosthetics, a sensor can help their legs and stuff move. Good. All right, a sore, an open place on the skin that hurts. And finally, veteran, a person who has fought for his or her country.
Topics. Then choose one and see, what does the author believe? You make it specific, but don't use any names. Cross out the author beliefs, now you have your theme, but you must support it with words from the story.
Chapter 9, The Midnight Duel. Harry had never believed he would meet a boy he hated more than Dudley, but that was before he met Draco Malfoy. Still, first-year Gryffindors only had potions with the Slytherins, so they didn't have to put up with Malfoy much. Or at least, they didn't until they spotted a notice pinned up in the Gryffindor common room that made them all groan. Flying lessons would be starting on Thursday, and Gryffindor and Slytherin would be learning together. Typical, said Harry darkly. Just what I always wanted, to make a fool of myself on a broomstick in front of Malfoy. He had been looking forward to learning to fly more than anything else. You don't know that you'll make a fool of yourself, said Ron reasonably. Anyway, I know Malfoy always going on about how good he is at Quidditch, but I bet that's all talk. Malfoy certainly did talk about flying a lot. He complained loudly about first years never getting on the house Quidditch teams and told long, boastful stories that always seemed to end with him narrowly escaping muggles in helicopters. He wasn't the only one, though. The way Seamus Finnegan told it, he'd spent most of his childhood zooming around the countryside on his broomstick. Even Ron would tell anyone who'd listen about the time he'd almost hit a hang glider on Charlie's old broom. Everyone from wizarding families talked about Quidditch. Constantly. Ron had already had a big argument with Dean Thomas, who shared their dormitory, about soccer. Ron couldn't see what was exciting about a game with only one ball where no one was allowed to fly. Harry had caught Ron prodding Dean's poster of West Ham's soccer team, trying to make the players move. Neville had never been on a broomstick in his life, because his grandmother had never let him near one. Privately, Harry felt she'd had good reason, because Neville managed to have an extraordinary number of accidents, even with both feet on the ground. Hermione Granger was almost as nervous about flying as Neville was. This was something you couldn't learn by heart out of a book. Not that she hadn't tried. At breakfast on Thursday, she bored them all stupid with flying tips she'd gotten out of a book called Quidditch Through the Ages. Neville was hanging on to every word, desperate for anything that might help him hang on to his broomstick longer. But everybody else was very pleased when Hermione's lecture was interrupted by the arrival of the mail. Harry hadn't had a single letter since Hagrid's note. Something that Malfoy had been quick to notice, of course. Malfoy's eagle owl was always bringing him packages of sweets from home, which he opened gloatingly at the Slytherin table. A barn owl brought Neville a small package from his grandmother. He opened it excitedly and showed them a glass ball the size of a large marble, which seemed to be full of white smoke. "It's a remember ball," he explained. "Gran knows I forget things. This tells you if there's something you've forgotten to do. Look, you hold it tight like this, and if it turns red," oh, his face fell because the remember-all had suddenly glowed scarlet. "You've forgotten something." Neville was trying to remember what he'd forgotten when Draco Malfoy, who was passing the Gryffindor table, snatched the remember ball out of his hand. Harry and Ron jumped to their feet. They were half hoping for a reason to fight Malfoy, but Professor McGonagall, who could spot trouble quicker than any teacher in the school, was there in a flash. "What's going on?" Malfoy got my remember ball, Professor. Scowling, Malfoy quickly dropped the remember ball back on the table. Just looking, he said. He slopped away with Crabbe and Goyle behind him. At 3:30 that afternoon, Harry, Ron, and the other Gryffindors hurried down the front steps onto the grounds for their first flying lesson. It was a clear, breezy day, and the grass rippled under their feet as they marched down the sloping lawns toward a smooth, flat lawn on the opposite side of the grounds, to the Forbidden Forest, whose trees were swaying darkly in the distance. The Slytherins were already there, so there were 20 broomsticks lying in neat lines on the ground. Harry had heard Fred and George Weasley complain about the school brooms, saying that some of them started to vibrate if you flew too high, or always flew slightly to the left. Their teacher, Madame Hooch, arrived. She had short, gray hair and yellow eyes like a hawk. Well, what are you all waiting for? She barked. Everyone stand by a broomstick. Come on, hurry up. Harry glanced down at his broom. It was an old, and some of the twigs stuck out at odd angles. Stick your right hand over your broom, called Madame Hooch at the front, and say, up. Up, everyone shouted. Harry's broom jumped into his hand at once, but it was one of the few that did. Hermione Granger had simply rolled over on the ground, and Neville's hadn't moved at all. Perhaps broom, like horses, could tell when you were afraid, thought Harry. There was a quiver in Neville's voice that said only too clearly that he wanted to keep his feet on the ground. Madame Hooch then showed them how to mount their brooms without sliding off the end, and walked up and down the rows, correcting their grips. Harry and Ron were delighted when she told Malfoy he'd been doing it wrong for years. Now when I blow my whistle, you kick off from the ground hard, said Madame Hooch. Keep your brooms steady. Rise a few feet, and then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly on my whistle. 3, 2, but Neville, nervous and jumpy and frightened of being left on the ground, pushed off hard before the whistle had touched Madame Hooch's lips. Come back, boy, she shouted, but Neville was rising straight up like a cork shot out of a bottle. 12 feet, 20 feet. Harry saw his scared white face look down at the ground, falling away, saw him gasp, sideways off the broom, and wham! A thud and a nasty crack, and Neville lay face down on the grass in a heap. His broomstick was still rising higher and higher, and started to drift lazily toward the Forbidden Forest and out of sight. Madame Hooch was bending over Neville, her face as white as his. Broken wrist, Harry heard her mutter. Come on, boy, it's all right, you get up. She turned to the rest of the class. None of you is to move while I take this boy to the hospital wing. You leave those brooms where they are, or you'll be out of Hogwarts before you can say Quidditch. Come on, dear. Neville, his face tear-streaked, clutching his wrist, hobbled with Madame Hooch, who had her arm around him. No sooner were they out of earshot than Malfoy burst into laughter. Did you see his face? The great lump? The other Slytherins joined in. Shut up, Malfoy, snapped Parvati Patel. Oh, sticking up for Longbottom, said Pansy Parkinson, a hard-faced Slytherin girl. Never thought you'd like fat little crybabies. Look, said Malfoy, darting forward and snatching something out of the grass. It's that stupid thing Longbottom's Gran sent him. The remember ball glittered in the sun as he held it up. Give that here, Malfoy, said Harry quietly. Everyone stopped talking to watch. Malfoy smiled nastily. I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find. How about up a tree? Give it here, yelled Harry. But Malfoy had leaped onto his broom and taken off. He hadn't been lying. He could fly well. Hovering level with the topmost branches of an oak, he called, Come and get it, Potter. Harry grabbed his broom. No, shouted Hermione Granger. Madame Hooch told us not to move. You'll get us all in trouble. Harry ignored her. Blood was pounding in his ears. He mounted the broom and kicked hard against the ground, and up he soared. Air rushed through his hair, and his robes whipped out behind him. And in a rush of fierce joy, he realized he'd found something he could do without being taught. This was easy. This was wonderful. He pulled his broomstick up a little to take it even higher. And heard screams and gasps of girls back on the ground, an admiring whoop from Ron. He turned his broomstick sharply to face Malfoy in midair. Malfoy looked stunned. "Give it here," Harry called, "or I'll knock you off that broom." "Oh, yeah?" said Malfoy, trying to sneer, but looking worried. Harry knew somehow what to do. He leaned forward and grasped the broom tightly in both hands, and it shot toward Malfoy like a javelin. Malfoy only just got out of the way in time. Harry made a sharp about-face and held the broom steady. A few people below were clapping. "No Crab and Goyle up here to save your neck, Malfoy," Harry called. The same thought seemed to have struck Malfoy. "Catch it if you can, then," he shouted. He threw the glass ball into the air and streaked back toward the ground. Harry saw, as though in slow motion, the ball rise up in the air and then start to fall. He leaned forward and pointed his broom handle down. Next second, he was gathering speed in a steep dive, racing the ball. Wind whistled in his ear, mingled with the screams of people watching. He stretched out his hand a foot from the ground. He caught it, just in time to be pulled his broom straight up and toppled gently onto the grass with the remember ball crushed safely in his fist. "Harry Potter!" His heart sank faster than he'd just dived. Professor McGonagall was running toward them. He got to his feet trembling. "Never in all my time at Hogwarts." Professor McGonagall was almost speechless with shock, and her glasses flashed furiously. "How dare you? Might have broken your neck." "It wasn't his fault, Professor." "Be quiet, Miss.Princell." "But Malfoy—" "That's enough, Mr. Weasley. Potter, follow me now." Harry caught sight of Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle's triumphant faces as he left, walking numbly in Professor McGonagall's wake as she strode toward the castle. He was going to be expelled. He just knew it. He wanted to say something to defend himself, but there seemed to be something wrong with his voice. Professor McGonagall was sweeping along without even looking at him. He had to jog to keep up. Now he'd done it. He hadn't even lasted 2 weeks. He'd be packing his bags in 10 minutes. What would the Dursleys say when he returned onto the doorstep? Up the front steps of the marble staircase inside, and still Professor McGonagall didn't say a word to him. She wrenched open doors and marched along corridors with Harry trotting miserably behind her. Maybe she was taking him to Dumbledore. He thought of Hagrid, expelled but allowed to stay on as a gamekeeper. Perhaps he could be Hagrid's assistant. His stomach twisted as he imagined it. Watching Ron and the others become wizards while he stumped around the grounds carrying Hagrid's bag? Professor McGonagall stopped outside a classroom. She opened the door and poked her face in. "Excuse me, Professor Filtwick. Could I borrow Wood for a moment?" Wood, thought Harry, bewildered. Was Wood a cane she was going to use on him? But Wood turned out to be a person, a burly fifth-year boy who came out of Filtwick's class looking confused. "Follow me, you two," said Professor McGonagall, and they marched up the corridor, Wood looking curiously at Harry. "In here?" Professor McGonagall pointed them into a class that was empty except for Peeves, who was busy writing rude words on the blackboard. "Out, Peeves," she barked. Peeves threw the chalk into a bin, which changed loudly, and he swooped out cursing. Professor McGonagall slammed the door behind him and turned to face the two boys. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I've found you a seeker." Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely," said Professor McGonagall crisply. "The boy's a natural. I've never seen anything like it. Was that your first time on a broomstick, Potter?" Harry nodded silently. He didn't have a clue what was going on, and he didn't seem to be being expelled, and some of the feeling started coming back to his leg. He caught that thing in his hand after a 50-foot dive, Professor McGonagall told Wood. Didn't even scratch himself. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it. Wood was now looking as though all his dreams had come true at once. "Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter?" he asked excitedly. "Wood's captain of the Gryffindor team," Professor McGonagall explained. "He's just the build for a seeker too," said Wood, now walking around Harry and staring at him. "Light? Speedy? We'll have to get him a decent broom. Professor, Nimbus 2000, or a clean sweep 7, I'd say. I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can't bend the first-year rule. Heaven knows we need a better team than last year. Flattened in the last match by Slytherin. I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks." Professor McGonagall peered sternly over her glasses at Harry. "I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you." Then she suddenly smiled. Your father would have been proud, she said. He was an excellent Quidditch player himself. You're joking. It was dinner time. Harry had just finished telling Ron what had happened when he'd left the grounds with Professor McGonagall. Ron had a piece of steak and kidney pie halfway in his mouth, but he'd forgotten all about it. Seeker, he said. But first years never. You must be the youngest house player in about a century, said Harry, shoving pie into his mouth. He felt particularly hungry after the excitement of the afternoon. Wood told me. Ron was so amazed, so impressed. He had just sat and gaped at Harry. I start training next week, said Harry. Only don't tell anyone. Wood wants to keep it a secret. Fred and George Weasley came into the hall, spotted Harry and hurried over. Well done, said George in a low voice. Wood told us. We're on the team too. Beaters. I tell you, we're going to win that Quidditch Cup for sure this year, said Fred. We haven't won since Charlie left. But this year's team is going to be brilliant. You must be good, Harry. Wood was almost skipping when he told us. Anyway, we've got to go. Lee Jordan records he found a new secret passageway out of school. Bet it's that one behind the statue of Gregory the Swarmy that we found in our first week, see you. Fred and George had hardly disappeared when someone far less welcome returned. Malfoy flanked by Crabbe and Goyle. Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to the Muggles? You're a lot braver now that you're back on the ground and you've got your little friends with you, said Harry coolly. There was, of course, nothing at all little about Crabbe and Goyle. But as the high table was full of teachers, neither of them could do more than crack their knuckles and scowl. I'd take you on any time on my own, said Malfoy. Tonight if you want. Wizard's duel? Wands only. No contact. What's the matter? Never heard of a wizard duel before, I suppose? Of course he has, said Ron, wheeling around. I'm his second. Who's yours? Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. Crabbe, he said. Midnight, all right. We'll meet you in the trophy room. That's always unlocked. When Malfoy had gone, Ron and Harry looked at each other. What is a wizard's duel? Said Harry. And what do you mean you're my second? Well, a second there to take over if you die, said Ron casually, getting started at his last cold pie. Catching the look on Harry's face, he added quickly, but people only die in proper duels, with real wizards. The most you, Malfoy, be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you know enough magic to do any real damage. I bet he expected you to refuse anyways. And what if I wave my wand and nothing happens? Throw it away and punch him on the nose? Ron suggested. Excuse me? They both looked up. It was Hermione Granger. Can a person eat in peace in this place? Said Ron. Hermione ignored him and spoke to Harry. I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying. Bet you could, Ron muttered. And you mustn't go wandering around the school at night. Think of the points you'll lose Gryffindor if you're caught. And you're bound to be. It's really selfish of you. And it's really none of your business, said Harry. Goodbye, said Ron. All the same, it wasn't what you'd call the perfect end to the day. Harry thought as he laid awake much later listening to Dean and Seamus falling asleep. Neville wasn't back from the hospital wing. Ron had spent all evening giving him advice such as, if he tries to curse you, you better dodge it, because I can't remember how to block them. There was a very good chance they were going to get caught by Filch or Miss Norris, and Harry felt he was pushing his luck, breaking another school rule today. On the other hand, Malfoy's sneering face kept looming up out of the darkness. This was his big chance to beat Malfoy face to face. He couldn't miss it. 11:30, Ron muttered at last. We better go. They pulled on their bathrobes, picked up their wands, and crept across the tower room, down the spiral case, and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers were still glowing in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry. A lamp flickered on. It was Hermione Granger, wearing a pink bathrobe and a frown. You, said Ron fiercely, go back to bed. I almost told your brother, Hermione snapped. Percy. He's a prefect. He put a stop to this. Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. Come on, he said to Ron. He pushed open the portraits of the fat lady and climbed through the hole. Hermione wasn't going to give up that easily. She followed Ron through a portrait hole, hissing at them like an angry goose. Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourself? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall from knowing about switching spells. Go away. All right, but I warned you. You just remember what I said when you're on the train home tomorrow. But what they were, they didn't find out. Hermione had turned to the portrait of the fat lady to go back inside and found herself facing an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit and Hermione was locked out of Gryffindor Tower. Now what am I going to do? She asked shrilly. That's your problem, said Ron. We've got to go. We're going to be late. They hadn't even reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. I'm coming with you, she said. You are not. Do you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Filch to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I'll tell him the truth, that I was trying to stop you and you can back me up. You've got some nerve, said Ron loudly. Shut up, both of you, said Ron sharply. I heard something. It was a sort of snuffing. Miss Norris, breathed Ron, squinting through the dark. It wasn't Miss Norris. It was Neville. He was curled up on the floor, fast asleep, but jerked suddenly awake as they crept nearer. Thank goodness you found me. I've been out of here for hours. I couldn't remember the new password to get into bed. Keep your voice down, Neville. The password's pig snout. But it won't help you now. The fat lady's gone off somewhere. How's your arm? Said Harry. Fine, said Neville, showing them. Madame Pumphrey mended it in about a minute. Good. Well, look, Neville. We've got somewhere to go. We'll see you later. Don't leave me, said Neville, scrambling to his feet. I don't want to stay here alone. The bloody Baron's been passed twice already. Ron looked at his watch and then glared furiously at Hermione and Neville. If either of you get us caught, I'll never rest until I've learned that curse of the bogey squirrel told us about and use it on you. Hermione opened her mouth, perhaps to tell Ron exactly how to use the curse of the bogies, but Harry hissed at her to be quiet and beckoned them all forward. They fitted along corridors striped with bars of moonlight. From the high windows, at every turn, Harry expected to run into Filch or Miss Norris, but they were lucky. They sped up a staircase to the third floor and tiptoed toward the trophy room. Malfoy and Crabbe weren't there yet. The crystal trophy cases glimmered where the moonlight caught them. Cups, shields, plates, and statues winked silver and gold in the darkness. They edged along the walls, keeping their eyes on the doors at either end of the room. Harry took out his wand in case Malfoy leapt in and started at once. The minutes crept by. He's late. Maybe he's chickened out, Ron whispered. Then a noise in the next room made them jump. Harry had once only just raised his wand when they heard someone speak, and it wasn't Malfoy. Sniff around, my sweet. They might be lurking in a corner. It was Filch speaking to Miss Norris. Horror struck. Harry waved madly at the other three to follow him as quickly as possible. They scurried silently toward the door, away from Filch's voice. Neville's robes had barely whipped around the corner when they heard Filch enter the trophy room. They're in here somewhere, they heard him mutter. Probably hiding. This way, Harry mouthed to the others, and petrified they began to creep down a long gallery full of suits of armor. They could hear Filch getting nearer. Neville suddenly let out a frightened squeak and broke into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around the wrist, and pair of them toppled right into the suits of armor. The clanging and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle. Run! Harry yelled, and the four of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around the doorpost and galloped down one corridor, then another. Harry in the lead without any idea where they were or where they were going. They ripped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway, hurtled along it, came out near their charms classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. I think we've lost him, Harry panted, leaning against the cold wall and wiping his forehead. Neville has been double wheezing and sputtering. I told you, Hermione gasped, clutching at the stitch in her chest. I told you. We've got to get back to Gryffindor Tower, said Ron, quickly as possible. Malfoy tricked you, Hermione said to Harry. You realize that, don't you? He was never going to meet you. Filch knew someone was going to be in the trophy room. Malfoy must have tipped him off. Harry thought she was probably right, but he wasn't going to tell her that. Let's go. It wasn't going to be that simple. They hadn't gone more than a dozen paces when a doorknob rattled, and something came shooting out of a classroom in front of them. It was Peeves. He caught sight of them and gave a squeal of delight. "Shut up, Peeves! Please, you'll get us thrown out!" Peeves cackled. "Wandering around at midnight, ickle firsties, tut tut tut. Naughty, naughty, you'll get caughty. Not if you don't give us away, Peeves, please. Should tell Finch, I should," said Peeves in a saintly voice, but his eyes glittered wickedly. "It's for your own good, you know." "Get out of the way!" snapped Ron, taking a swipe at Peeves. This was a big mistake. "Students out of bed?" Peeves bellowed. "Students out of bed down the charmed corridor!" Ducking under Peeves, they ran for their life, right to the end of the corridor, where they slammed into a door and it was locked. "This is it," Ron moaned, as they pushed helplessly at the door. "We're done for. This is the end." They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could towards Peeves' shouts. "Oh, move over," Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Alamora." The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through it, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it. "Which way did they go, Peeves?" Filch would say. "Quick, tell me." "Say please." "Don't mess with me, Peeves. Where did they go?" "Shan't say nothing if you don't say please," said Peeves in his annoying sing-song voice. "All right, please." "Nothing." "Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please." Ha ha ha. And they heard the sound of Peeves whooshing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks the door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay." "Get off, Neville." For Neville had been tugging on the sleeve of Harry's bathrobe for the last minute. "What?" Harry turned around and saw quite clearly what. For a moment he was sure he'd walk into a nightmare. This was too much. On top of everything that had happened so far, they were in a room, as he had supposed. They were in a corridor, the forbidden corridor on the 3rd floor. And now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog. A dog that filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling mad eyes, 3 noses twitching and quivering in the direction, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery robes from yellow fangs. It was standing quiet, still, all 6 eyes staring at them, and Harry knew that the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise. But it was quickly getting over that. There was no mistaking what those thunderous growls meant. Harry groped for the doorknob. Between Filch and death, he'd take Filch. They fell backwards, Harry slammed the door shut, and they ran. They almost flew back down the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them somewhere else, because they didn't see him anywhere. But they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. "Where on earth have you been?" she asked, looking at their bathrobes hanging on their shoulders and their flushed, sweaty faces. "Never mind that. Pig snout, panted Harry, and the portrait swung forward. They scrambled into the common room and collapsed, trembling into armchairs. It was a while before any of them said anything. Neville indeed looked as if he'd never speak again. "What do they think they're doing? Keeping a thing like that locked up in a school," said Ron finally. "If any dog needs exercise, that one does." Hermione had both her breath and her bad temper back again. "You don't use your eyes, any of you, do you?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what it was standing on?" "The floor," Harry suggested. "I wasn't looking at its feet. I was too busy with its heads." "No, not the floor. It was standing on a trapdoor. It's obviously guarding something." She stood up, glaring at them. "I hope you're pleased with yourself. We could have all been killed or worse, expelled. Now, if you don't mind, I'm going to bed." Ron stared after her, his mouth open. "No, we don't mind," he said. "You'd think we dragged her along, wouldn't you?" But Hermione had given Harry something else to think about as he climbed back into bed. The dog was guarding something. What had Hagrid said? Gringotts was the safest place in the world for something you would want to hide, except perhaps Hogwarts. It looked as though Harry had found out where the grubby little package from Vault 713 was. Tomorrow we will read Chapter 10, Halloween.